Before we begin, I want to be very clear about why we're here and what I'm hoping to do in this conversation. I want everyone listening or watching to understand something important. I respect the people in this room, not just as leaders and friends, but peers and fellow humans. My aim today is deeper than politics. I believe we're living in a time of profound confusion. Confusion that is not accidental. Confusion that is being spoken into the world through media, through algorithms, through rhetoric, and through fear. I see it affecting my friends and family on the right and on the left alike. I see it affecting families, friendships, churches, and communities. I pray daily for discernment. I pray for humility of conscience, for humility to admit that information I receive, the algorithms I see, and the conclusions I draw may not be complete and may at times be wrong. And I extend that same grace to people who vote differently than I do, because I believe they too are navigating a world flooded with distortion. Above all, I want to be very clear about my anchor. I'm trying to honor God in how these conversations are held. Our faith calls us not to judge, but to love our neighbor as ourselves. That doesn't mean avoiding hard questions. It means asking them with humility, truth, and love. So today, I want to explore truth without cruelty. I want to ask hard questions without demeaning the person answering them. And I want to model what it looks like to disagree without assuming malice or stupidity. If we leave this conversation understanding one another more clearly, even if we still disagree, then I believe we've done something worthwhile. That is my aim, and I'm grateful you're willing to step into it with me. I am so happy and excited for this interview. This is the first time I'm sitting down with all three of you, right?
Yeah, that's right.
So Chris Putnam, the Dallas Express CEO, Shanon Murphy, producer of this show and of our sports network.
That's right, our new sports network.
That we recently launched, right? And then our senior investigative reporter, Kellen, who is just crushing it. And I have such a deep respect for each of you. I wanted to make sure that was certainly clear before we start off. Only because I'm really wanting to pour into something that I don't know that anyone or everyone is doing. And Chris, I mean, you could have sat on the sidelines. You were a multimillionaire, like exited from a wonderful tech company. And then, you know, we were introduced to each other essentially just because it was Aaron, right, that thought that you'd be a great fit.
I've known Monty for 10 years.
Yeah.
Monty always supported a lot of things that I was doing in politics.
But he did not know that you had a background in journalism.
No, very few people know that, actually.
Who would?
Yeah, I mean, that was my original plan in college. I was in broadcast journalism major. I wrote for the TCU Skiff, the student paper there. That was my passion. And, you know, I got married at an early age and went to work.
Yep.
Couldn't figure out a way to make money doing that.
Yeah.
It's still hard. And except for this guy. And so I was just always passionate about it. I've always had a perspective on, you know, media and what was wrong with it, particularly in the last 10 years. And so, yeah, when, you know, I got the phone call, I was like, yeah, you know, absolutely. And I think what's funny about that story is I got that phone call one afternoon. I think it was at breakfast with Molly the next day, and 10 minutes into it,
Tired.
That was it. Yeah.
Tired. And I'm so glad because, as you know, it takes thick skin to do what you're doing. I guess what all of us are doing in many respects, because Shanon here, she comes from the formerly Kid Craddock show, right? You're a celebrity, local celebrity here, Psycho Shanon, but she's definitely not psycho.
Shanon.
She's not psycho, for the record. An exceptional human being, and she is kind of in a pot of people who think and vote very differently from her, which I applaud you for having thick skin and for being a voice that I believe I very much need to hear frequently. So thank you.
Well, thank you for having me.
Yeah.
I know it takes a lot of trust.
But you're easy to trust.
Well, thank you.
You really are. And now, Kellen, our senior investigative reporter, you went to the University of Alabama, master's in
public administration.
Administration, and is brilliant. And so I thank you for all of the difficult topics that you constantly tackle with such grace, supported data, and a lot of thoughtful research. You all are great. And with the collective efforts of each of you, now the Dallas Express, I mean, we have a White House press pass, which is insane. Are we the only local media outlet?
I'm sure. Well, local depends on what local means. Because as you know, like our other two major local outlets are both New York and New Jersey owned. And so Hearst might, I'm sure they do.
Yeah.
But I don't know if there's a Dallas-based reporter up there.
Sure.
So yeah,
Sure.
we're definitely we're a very unique outlet in that sense. Because a lot of them are monsters, right? The big guys, Fox, CNN, etc. LA Times, New York Times. Yeah. So it's we're unique in that sense. And you feel it, when you're there and surrounded by all that.
And yeah, I'm just so proud. I'm so excited of all that you've been able to do. Your business prowess absolutely shows.
Thank you.
It does, because now we have millions of impressions on our social posts.
Yeah, about 40 million last month.
Exactly. So I'm going to start, I guess, with you, Chris. Do you feel the weight of that responsibility, of what that means to have that type of reach?
Yeah, absolutely. And, again, from my evaluation or just my personal critique of what media had become, I felt like the single biggest element that was missing a lot of times was the truth. Just the truth. We went through,
That's why Marnie and I
COVID
started this.
and lies
That's right.
about COVID origins and Russiagate, which was total fiction. The second Trump impeachment was about Ukraine. It was really about the president at that time trying to figure out like what the connections were between the Biden family and Ukraine, and while this money was flowing back to their foundation, things like that. There's this example after example, as you know, and it just felt like the what I call the lying legacy media, but some people refer to as the mainstream media, has just gotten so lost. And in terms of promoting one party's political agenda, and I tell people all the time, like, we're not trying to be the Dallas-Fort Worth Red State or Breitbart. We're not that ideological, actually, but truth is sacrosanct, and truth is what's important. And that's what I'm really proud of. I think that because we've done so many stories that people didn't want to like, but they found the truth in it. That's what built our credibility. That's gotten us here.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you for that perspective. And diverse viewpoints, I think, is essential to allow an organization to thrive and run. Do you believe that there is any truth that lies in the left of center?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Oh, 100%. And as you know, like some of our biggest stories have been about other Republicans. There absolutely is. And the problem is people nowadays, particularly if they're digital consumers of news, just get trapped in these algorithmic prisons. I know lots of people that literally, on both sides, that just can't see the other side at all because it's never presented to them.
Yeah.
And that's actually like a shame. It's terrible because there's plenty of common ground for Americans to agree on. I think the polarization is horrible. I have plenty of theories as to why, but that's one contributing factor. We're being fed what they think that we want to consume.
That's right.
And then you literally don't even forget being able to interpret the other side. You don't even see it. A great use case was this situation last week with Jasmine Crockett and Tallarico in the Colbert Show. They just flat out lied to everybody. And I mean, the mainstream media about the circumstances of them not publishing the Tallarico interview. It was an equal time issue, as you know. Instead, they blamed the president and the FCC. And I mean, the mainstream media ran with it like crazy, instantly. No time to filter, investigate whether it's true. They just run with it. And that's the point. And so, it happens on the right as well. There's a lot of influencers, in fact, that are just a problem. They're inflammatory and they do the same things. They're reactive because they're just trying to, fish for clicks. But what happens is it's entertaining to people. And so
it is entertaining.
Yeah. They just get trapped there and we can't see each other. Does that make sense?
Of course. Of course. And Shanon, how do you believe that your consumption of media has been formed, your algorithms in particular?
Oh, I'm sure my algorithms are left of center. And it makes it really hard to decipher truth from story, from fiction. And I know that I have to do conscious research
Mm-hmm.
to see what is what.
Yep.
Because I don't know what to believe.
Do you
That's
think
right.
that's healthy or not?
Which part
That
of
you
it?
have to do the research.
Of course not. It means
don't.
that we don't have trust in what's being fed to us.
That's
And,
true.
and it's disgusting.
Yeah, it is. And it breaks my heart just from the standpoint alone that, I mean, thankfully, I have not felt any friction in my family. Maybe with one friend, kind of a distant friend, but most of my close friends who vote differently than I do, they're wonderful and very open to the fact that we do share a lot in common, especially on the faith side. If any of you are comfortable saying, do you have any type of identification with respect to your religion? Like I always say that I'm a Catholic, but then also I'm Catholic. I'm Catholic. That's it. But I'm also
There's Catholic and not Catholic.
well, no. But I'm saying I go to Protestant church with my husband. I go to the Cowboy Church. I go to fellowship. I listen to fellowship. So I listen to it pretty regularly, like, non-Catholic type of messages, especially since my brother-in-law has had a lot to do with my recent faith formation and awakening. But yeah, what about each of you?
Methodist.
Methodist. Okay.
Since birth.
Got you.
Raised Catholic,
Uh-huh.
but currently confused.
Yeah, absolutely.
Raised Catholic Baptist and have been for decades.
Baptist. Got it. So I was non-denominational and Catholic essentially as I was raised, but then in college I went and I got confirmed. So,
My oldest son, he's 27. He's doing that now. And I mean,
Interesting.
his mother's family was Catholic, but not practicing. But he's somehow been drawn to it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so
Okay.
he's starting that process.
Interesting. Okay. And the only really reason that I'm saying it's interesting is because I believe that there's fragmentation, not just in our social circles and in people who vote differently, but even amongst people who come from faith-based institutions. And I really pray that there's some type of ideology moving forward that allows for a new awakening and appreciation for people across all different types of denominations.
I don't think it's ideology as much as it's respect.
For sure.
Mutual respect.
That's right.
And that's what we're missing now.
Mm-hmm.
I actually live in a really crazy diverse neighborhood, kind of the hipster part of Dallas.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Wait.
And I live very near the Bishop Arts District. And
That's right.
I live in
You
Oak Cliff.
moved.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I am surrounded by people that are different than me, and I really enjoy that.
Mhm.
What's hard is
I
when
do
these
too.
people are just so again, both sides.
Uh-huh.
When people become so grounded and tolerant in their beliefs that they think the other side is evil.
Mm-hmm.
And again, there's plenty of things we find common ground on. We know this collectively because of the work that we do here, crime
Mm-hmm.
in Dallas. I mean, at the end of the day, people just want to feel safe in their homes and neighborhoods.
And it's so misconstrued. They're flat out lies.
Well, somehow we've politicized crime.
That's right. That's right.
Which is crazy to me, but we have.
That's right. And we shouldn't.
Yeah.
Have each of you, at any point in your lives, have you read the Declaration of Independence?
Oh, sure. I had to memorize it.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Definitely.
So, okay. And were you raised saying or stating the Pledge of Allegiance?
Yes.
Yeah.
Of course.
Without the God part, though.
Really?
With the Texas pledge, there was no God.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Honor the Texas flag.
I pledge allegiance to the Texas one and indivisible. That's how we learned it. But I've
Interesting.
noticed going to my nephews and my niece's
Uh-huh.
school that they now have God in there.
Here in
They
Texas.
added it when
And
I was in
prosper,
elementary
yeah.
school.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, there's been a big effort in the state legislatures.
Yeah,
we
that's
had
right.
Mays Middle in here last week,
That's right.
actually, to
Yeah.
re-inject some Judeo-Christian elements back into public schools.
That's right. That's exactly right. Okay. And I'm asking all of these things because I want to make sure that we're all coming from a baseline that is one of, I guess, education that most people have not had. I believe that most people circulating around us have not read, the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, things of that sort. Am I wrong?
I've always said there should be, like, in middle school, maybe even
Yes.
elementary. There should be like an entire, at least one semester dedicated to the Constitution.
Yes.
The
I
history
agree
of the
with that.
Constitution, the Constitution itself, various interpretations. It doesn't have to take one interpretation or the
Mhm.
other.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's something that we're absolutely lacking.
Yeah. And it's interesting for me as a woman of faith because I read everything out there now, especially with respect to a lot of these topics that you're tackling, Kellen, so well, by the way, with respect to immigration, you know, I'll just leave it at immigration for now. But the whole treating our neighbor, right? Loving our neighbor, treating them with respect. I do believe that there is a lot that I may believe as a woman of faith that a lot of the people who vote similarly to me don't believe. And I don't know if that's right or wrong. Actually, I know it's right because of the comments that I read on these different things. So how do you, Chris, as the leader of the Dallas Express, and maybe you can weigh in on this, Kellen, because your writings are very indicative of fair and balanced thought. How do you make sure that that exact space that we criticize legacy media for, that pervasive one single-mindedness, this narrative, do you make all of the people that write articles find the reverse argument for what it is that they're in fact writing about?
I'll say this. First of all, back to what you said initially, I feel the responsibility of it.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel the responsibility of the truth,
Mm-hmm.
regardless of who or what we're covering. And we have another sacrosanct principle that whoever we're writing about or whatever we're writing about, we seek to get the other side of the story. We beat it into these guys.
Mm-hmm.
Get the quote. Don't just email them, call them. If you get them on the phone, and we will quote whoever that is completely accurately, not out of context, right? And so a lot of what's perceived as, our editorial perspective is grounded in the fact that we just do a lot of stories that a lot of the far left outlets that are mainstream won't even touch, right?
Yep.
And so, we absolutely try to, have that kind of balance. It's just, it gets reflected differently. And what happens is when you're a new media or independent media source, the factory, the mainstream factory just absolutely rejects you because you're not in their club. And the problem with that factory is, and I think Elon Musk had some data on this recently, 90% of political donations from journalists or the media community, come from the left. That's just a fact. And so when people see something different, they kind of react viscerally to it. It's been very good for us, of course, because there was obviously this huge appetite out there,
Sure, for the
for
voice
all
that
these
was
folks that
not
have been
represented.
that have been disenfranchised. And that's not all, but that's part of the reason, the Star Telegram has been bankrupt once and now is owned by a New Jersey hedge fund, and Dallas Morning News was losing $80 million a year before they got purchased by her. That's the reason their readership is dying.
And how is it, again, kind of more specifically and pointed, within the newsroom, do you have an exercise, Kellen, that he has you do, or you guys can tell me this, that says, okay, here is what we're going to be writing about, right? Go out and do active research to ensure that you're well-versed on any type of opposing viewpoint, because, right, we always try, that's kind of the tenet of our founding. We always try and get comments from people on both sides of a situation in which we're writing about. People don't always comment, but that's a practice that I love. But what else do we do within the newsroom to ensure that there is not a one-sided voice?
You go ahead first, and then I'll.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, when I went through orientation at the Dallas Express a few years ago, what we were instructed to do, which was a really good practice that I still follow, was whatever side is getting to speak the most in the story, at the very minimum, give the opposing side at least 50 words, which can be a paragraph or two in a story, and so that the other side is represented, and give them the opportunity, give them a fair chance to speak.
And from the use case you just described with the PPP loan, that didn't happen.
Of course not.
Yeah.
It was horrible. But yes.
And part of that is, reaching out in a timely manner to give an opportunity to the other side to respond. And also, you would see this a lot in the reporting during COVID. The outlets became stenographers for the press releases from the CDC. And whatever the CDC said was gospel. And so a source was treated as an authority purely because it had a big name. And my personal philosophy is not to treat anything as if it's God, unless it's God speaking, but I don't quote God in
By the way, that's
stories,
analogous to the situation here locally that's existed for years with the Dallas Morning News and City. As you know, look at what we just went through in the last 2 years with Hero. It was denial, flat out denial that there was a crime problem downtown.
That's right.
Monty was a leading voice in saying, hey, look, we got to fix this or we're in trouble. We saw the AT&T thing coming. In fact, we were reporting the likelihood of their leaving downtown. Got a cease and desist that I'm probably going to frame because we were absolutely right about that as well, because we have good sources.
And remember, I think I wrote an article about it, the Mavs leaving or something, and the comments on there were appalling.
Yeah.
And it was one of the last articles I think that I had written, and I'm like,
well, a year later, as you know, after Hero, not even a year, months later, Downtown Dallas Inc. commissions this Boston Consulting Group report that basically says everything we've been saying, that, we're at risk of really, killing downtown if we don't get the crime and homelessness situation.
That's exactly right.
Addressed. And at least they heard you, they heard us, and have started to do that. We're a long way from doing. I think the situation downtown as it relates to crime is as or at least in terms of occupancy, is as bad as it's been. But there's hope. There's lots of things we could do, particularly with Y'all Street growing so tremendously here, and even the things in New York, are, with Mamdani, are going to influence what happens here.
Yeah,
didn't mean to cut you off.
No, I made my point.
No, but it's very helpful. Shanon, would you agree with that? That whenever you're on the weekly calls, do you think that there is decent representation? Do you even contribute to the weekly newsroom conversations? Are you on those calls?
They don't ask for my opinion on that stuff. Rightfully so.
She checks us though.
You do?
Oh yeah.
Oh, that's
she'll let you know when we're off base. I ask her.
You know what I do too, always. And that's why I always tell her, you got to hold me accountable, Shanon, and she does.
And I poke fun at you guys, kind of, and I just say, I am a Democrat surrounded by Republicans. I don't know
we have a few.
what I did to get here, but this is me.
I always tell people, I don't care what your party affiliation is. You know, what I want are talented people who understand what we're doing and why, and want to be a part of it. That's what makes the culture.
Yep.
That's what makes the culture.
And it's beautiful. I'm going to pivot over slightly to a little more policy here and topics that you're actually writing about. With respect to H-1Bs, just visas in general, but I know that they're meant to supplement and to not replace American workers. Do you specifically see that promise breaking down in practice from what you've been writing?
Well, the H-1B visa, for listeners that maybe aren't familiar with it, is a temporary non-immigrant visa category that lasts for 6 years of employment, although there's ways to make it last longer or shorter. And there's about 80,000 visas that go to the private sector every year, and then an unlimited number that goes to the public nonprofit sector, so like universities, right? And the idea, what was sold to the public in 1990, when both parties came together to create the H-1B visa, was that there are certain shortages in the labor market that must be filled. And so we have to open up America's labor market so that tech or medicine can have the workers that they need. But that is not what's worked out in practice over the 30-something years since the Immigration Act of 1990 took effect. What we see in many cases are Americans who already have jobs being replaced by foreign workers. And this is
purely on the basis of labor arbitrage.
Purely
It's
on the
just
basis
cheaper.
of labor arbitrage. There was a working paper we covered a few weeks ago at the Dallas Express, and about the average H-1B worker will be paid about 16% less to their similarly qualified American counterpart.
That's right.
So there's an incentive here with labor arbitrage. And some of the biggest spreaders of disinformation, I hate to use that term, but untrue information, we could say, about the H-1B visa are the Department of Labor. Lori Chavez DeReamer, who's the Secretary of the Department of Labor, said a few weeks ago, you must advertise a job to an American before you can go and hire an H-1B worker. That's not true. The American Immigration Council said that the H-1B visa exists to fill labor shortages. that's what we were told, but that's not actually in the text of the law that there must be a labor shortage before a company can go and get a visa. I'll use just one more example. Last fall, when the whole country was kind of having a battle over the merits of the H-1B visa, of course, tech was still consuming the most. All the top 10 H-1B users are tech companies. And
excluding universities and such, right?
No, including universities.
Oh, including.
Yes. When you put them all together, tech still comes to the top, because I think Amazon is the biggest user, and they've got like 45,000 over the last 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
Here locally, it's KPMG, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Oh, you've memorized my reports. I think that was in last week's report. Yes, KPMG. But at the same time that the tech industries are consuming all of these visas, 1 in 4 computer science majors, 1 in 4 computer engineers and similar tech-related jobs faced unemployment or underemployment. 1 in 4. The college degree, the American college degree, has really become nothing of value, because unemployment for a young college-educated person today is the same as a young non-college educated person, and yet we bring in more foreign labor every year. And so that's part of the concern workers are facing. On the employer side, of course, these foreign workers are desirable because they're cheap and they're compliant. They rarely sue, and they have to put up with whatever conditions are given to them, good or bad, because they have to maintain their company's sponsorship to stay here in the U.S. for the entire time they're here. You know, and then they have to keep it as they go through the green to get the green card process. So,
Sarah, this is one of the most palpable issues right now in North Texas, because what's happening is we're seeing certain communities that happen to be located close to these major tech centers. Frisco is an example, McKinney, Southlake. 20% of the population, the overall population in Southlake now, is East Indian. It's over 30% in Frisco, I believe. And so people are seeing their communities fundamentally transform. And I think it's a fair question. I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but it's a fair question of whether we've gone too far with it. We know there's abuses. Kellen did an outstanding series on Dallas ISD. How big? 300 plus H-1B employees there. They spent millions of dollars.
It's about 1,200 H-1B employees over 5 years.
There you go. I understated it. Yeah, what's ironic about that is a lot of them are foreign nationals brought in to teach kids English. So we have foreign nationals teaching other foreign nationals how to speak English, which I think is ironic. But there's a lot of other examples. And I have relevant experience here. I came from the tech industry, and we had our Indian offshore development facility like every business does. And it's not true that a lot of these job skills are that specialized. There are some, but it's not as universal as it's been adopted. That's just a fact. And so the question is, with respect to that community in particular, they get the overwhelming majority of these H-1B
72%.
visas. Like, so
72 go to India and 12% goes to China.
They're also very smart.
That's true.
This
and they're
community
college
is
educated.
extremely
but they've
smart
also
and well-educated.
they're also very organized.
Yep.
In terms of how they
Disciplined.
work that system.
Correct.
Yeah, and it takes care of itself in a lot of ways.
And you know what's interesting? I grew up in El Paso, Texas, and Juarez. So for me, white people, and strangely enough, I did not consider myself to be white until I guess I learned that I'm very white passing. And so, but either way, I knew that white people, white Americans were the minority out there. Absolutely were.
We are in Texas generally.
Well, yes, yes.
Now.
But what's interesting is that, you know, I come to places like DFW and there's so much diversity here, like a ton, with respect to El Paso, where it's predominantly Hispanic. So again, white people, black people, that's very much the minority out there. Indian Americans up here, that was one of the things that I found enriching and really cool about coming to DFW was the fact that there were so many different types of people versus where I lived. Do you have a preference for how, I guess, these cities, I'll start with you, Shanon, since with respect to how these cities should look, diversity wise? Should there be a certain amount of Asians, white people, black people, brown people, like
a
just,
race quota kind of thing?
And this is a question I'm going to be asking maybe all of you, because I don't know. Because whenever you say, these neighborhoods start to look really different, for me, I'm like, in my brain, I think, is that just a neighborhood changing? Because where I'm from, there's all brown people. Like, should it be, should
in Highland Park?
No, okay, not in Highland Park. I'm saying where I'm from in El Paso, right? There's primarily brown people. And now in Highland Park, I feel no different from anyone, although I know that my background is very, very unique from those who surround me in that city. Mm-hmm.
I think we should be as colorful as we can be. Honestly, I don't know of a better way to say it.
Yeah.
Growing up, you hear that the United States is this melting pot that's made of all these cultures.
Mm-hmm.
And that is just ingrained in my head. Like, that's what I think America should be.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a race or a religion or a gender identity issue. It's an assimilation issue.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the key thing. And that's what people are struggling with right now.
Mm-hmm.
Let's take the high concentration of East Indians in North Texas now, right? These people don't commit crimes, not at the same rates that other demographic groups do.
Right.
As you pointed out, they work hard, they're smart.
Mm-hmm.
That's not, but they're also importing their culture here.
That's right.
And not necessarily embracing American culture. And that doesn't mean you're, dressed in the red, white, and blue when the hockey team plays. But I think that's what, people are wrestling with a little bit. That conversation gets even stickier when you talk about the Muslim community and what's going on there and the proliferation of mosques and things like Epic City, and they're all over the place.
That's right.
That's a trickier conversation.
See, I don't think it's tricky at all, because for me, I want the form of government that I vote for. I want that to be the form of government that operates this free country, because we're still free, and I will fight for that freedom. But if there are legal structures in these religious spaces or institutions that in their belief system circumvent the powers of the United States, that's when I have a problem.
Yeah.
I'm like, And I will fight tooth and nail to make sure that the United States of America's founding items are what breathe freedom into the system still today.
Right.
That is when I find a problem. How do you find that it's sticky for some people?
Well, I think I'm being polite.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's not sticky for me.
With that particular use case, all you have to do is look at what happened in parts of Western Europe. I spent a lot of time in London. What has happened in Minnesota? Look, that
London.
community
It's
is
so
very
sad.
purposely, and they're not even shy about talking about it, populating these areas where they weren't there historically for the express purpose of taking over local governments and assuming political power.
Yep.
I don't know how any critically thinking person can see it any other way. Anybody that's thinking intellectually, honestly at all. And that's why the issue has risen to where it is. The legal solutions are a little trickier, in order to deal with it. But yeah, it's not me saying it. It's them. It's that community saying that it's, they don't believe a lot of what we believe, constitutionally.
That's right.
And they're as discriminatory from a religious point of view as anybody out there.
That's exactly
And
right.
so I think so. A lot of people are having a pretty visceral reaction to that. Very different from H-1B. Again,
that's why I wanted to draw that line. But
yeah.
keep going.
What's really
Good.
interesting is there's more real legal action being taken on that front, and those folks aren't necessarily taking as many jobs away, from Americans as H-1Bs are. But the interesting political dynamic that people need to understand is a lot of business leaders support H-1B.
Yep.
So a lot of politicians don't want to talk about it, even when it's staring them in the face. And I think that's what we're seeing, the temperature go up in parts of North Texas, because they're just not incentivized to do anything but continue to go along with it while it fundamentally transforms these communities.
Yeah. Go ahead, Kellen.
On the diversity element, you asked about communities. From an employment perspective, there was some internal documents leaked out of Amazon Whole Foods in, I think, 2018 or so. And what it showed is that the interest in Amazon Whole Foods in diversity wasn't so much that they just loved diversity. It was that if you kind of moneyball the demographics of your labor force and you get the right amount of, black women and white gay guys and Hispanics and white women and everything, get the right numbers right, they don't unionize. And so from a union perspective, it's very beneficial to not have, or
because
to have a lot
groups
of
they don't cooperate or socialize, and
whatever it is.
That's very interesting.
Whatever it is that makes people come together, according to Amazon's internal documents, doesn't quite happen if you get the moneyballed levels of diversity. So part of talking about diversity, you have to think about unions and labor. You may like the diversity because it may help your bottom line, may help your business. You may not like it because you may want to belong to a labor union. Back to the H-1B.
By the way, just let me, if I could add to that. It's so interesting now that, the president's popularity in the upper Midwest, right, is with a lot of those unionized groups. I had a Teamsters endorsement in my election in 2020. So there's really, this is the first time I actually heard this thesis, but I think you're onto something there. That's a bunch of white guys, blue collar guys that are naturally socializing and working very closely together. They share a lot of probably similar values as opposed to having more of this fragmented approach.
The labor unions, of course, J.D. Vance spoke at the IAFF in 2024, and then the Teamsters spoke at the RNC. That's a big change. That was a big change. So certainly there's a labor element here. Now, back to the H-1B, some of the companies that use the most H-1B visas in Texas and across the U.S., we'll use Tesla as one example, they consume a ton of H-1B visas, and they are constantly fighting off the UAW.
That's right.
The UAW and several other labor unions are always trying to organize the Tesla plants, and so far they haven't been successful. So there's a labor breaking element, both with diversity, according to the corporation's own documents, and to the H-1B visa. Now, the H-1B visa, by law, is not supposed to be used for strike breaking.
That's right.
So if your workers go on strike, you can't bring in a bunch of foreign workers. However, if you act prophylactically, you may be able to bring in workers that are just less inclined to unionization because maybe they don't have the cultural familiarity with it. And then, of course, there's that sponsorship element I mentioned earlier.
A lot of them are just happy to be here.
Happy to be here?
Yeah.
And how do you sign a union card if you are an H-1B worker? Because you've got to be in your employer's best graces at any moment. And if you lose those best graces because you signed a union card, you can be sent home in the way like I can't because I was born in Fort Worth to American parents.
Yeah.
My concern with H-1B is we already have AI that's fundamentally transforming every industry, and it will continue to. For example, I think we've furloughed some TSA folks. I mean, how far are we away from having AI machines that eliminate those jobs?
Here.
At least eliminate a huge percentage. That's just one use case, right?
That's right.
Now, and so if you marry those two things together, the impact of AI and H-1B, well, now you got a society-changing situation. One of them we can't do anything about. Technological innovation is just going to happen.
That's right.
We have to adapt as a society. Workers have to adapt. Kids going to school have to be smart about, where they're going to invest their time and money.
To future-proof themselves.
But the H-1B situation exacerbates that. And back to Kellen's point, I know, because I came from the tech industry, what would you say the number was, 1 in 4?
1 in 4, yeah.
Yeah, no, it's significant, significant. Like, I know a lot of people who have been directly impacted by it. Again, in job roles that aren't, exclusive or specialized in any way. And so those two things together, I think, have the potential to fundamentally transform our workforce. And by the way, I'm not an advocate for eliminating H-1B. It's like Israel, Palestine. It's nuanced. And the problem with nuance is, back to our original discussion, when you get in these digital prisons, there's just no escaping them, and we can't have an honest conversation about it.
Yep.
The answer is reform it, regulate it. Not necessarily a huge fan of regulation either, but in this case, it's necessary. And find the happy medium that works for everybody. But we can't have that conversation.
But why can't we? Because I mean, we are right now, right, Shanon? Is there, what fundamentally do you disagree with respect to things that we have, or they have stated here just regarding H-1B visas, if anything?
It's hard to argue with anything that you're saying, but it's also really hard for me as a human that wants that diversity and everybody to be treated equally. It's hard for me to swallow that. And I know everything is politicized. And when I see, this is going to sound terrible and forgive me, but you guys know how I vote.
It's fine.
When you see the leaders up top, it feels like they're trying to white out America.
He's actually one of the biggest proponents of H-1B. It's very contradictory.
Well, I'm
to his
talking about the ICE stuff and all of that.
Different
like
issue.
As it is,
Which we
but
will touch upon
overall,
briefly.
like the umbrella feels like we're trying to white it out. And instead of going after the businesses that are taking advantage of these people, we just want to get rid of the people. And I don't understand why we can't look at it that way. Like if there's a business that is actively doing these things, why are we not doing anything about the business and we're going after the people
know that
instead?
answer?
Go ahead, tell me.
It's because that's where the political contributors are. I mean, we just mentioned Elon. Trump and Elon are the two of the biggest H-1B proponents there are.
They are.
And, they recite the talking points that are, supporting H-1B, the specialized skill sets, et cetera.
Well, do you think that that's because there are also two large business owners who take advantage of the system?
I think that.
What can we do about it with them?
It's not. So you got to remember something. It's not them. It's our legislators.
Trump is a business owner?
No. But those problems have to be solved, in our legislatures, whether it's the state legislature or Congress.
But to your
Congress
point,
doesn't do much of anything.
But to your point, he's supporting it. So do you think that might be because he's taken advantage of it as a hotel owner and a person who makes billions of dollars off of all these things? He's not paying housekeepers or whatever it might be as much as he could be. I mean, the fact of the matter is, I think that he is doing everything, and this just turned really political, and I'm sorry. But the reason that I have such an issue with it is because it's like the top, that the horse rots from the top down, and he is the top. And I just feel like there's so much wrong with the way that we see people, the way that we treat people. And it has changed so much since our president took office that I can't see things that way.
But go back to illegal immigration, right? That labor pool is even less expensive than the H-1B labor pool. So by that logic, you would think that he wouldn't be as incentivized to, send those people home.
That is fair. But he's doing, sorry.
But this is where I get to the algorithm prison thing. I'm not accusing you of that. I'm just saying that we get so grounded in either what politicians on our respective sides preach to us, most of which is during times like this, we're in the middle of a heated election cycle. This is one of the most heated in history of Texas because everything's changing at the top.
Yep.
And you just hear it. So you hear the extremes from both sides.
That's right.
And then, March 3rd will roll around. Things will settle down a little bit. Although in this case, we're going to have a few prominent runoffs, so maybe not so much.
Not in Texas.
But typically, that's the way it works. And, the one thing that's been interesting historically in the United States is when either side has gone too far, it gets reeled back in. I mean, would you acknowledge that illegal immigration went too far under Biden?
Under Biden?
Yeah.
I do argue with that point.
Okay.
I think it's been a succession of it happening, and now we have a problem with it, and we need somebody to blame. But I understand that there were high numbers.
Obama deported more people.
I get that.
So how do you explain that?
This is why I wish I would have done a little more research, but then I feel overprepared with my research.
You're being authentic. It's great.
I'm glad because
it's all so
But these are the types of
confusing.
conversations people should have.
People should have.
Without getting offended or saying this person's evil or this person's evil, that's where or you're a racist. That the problem is it defaults too quickly to that.
I agree.
And that's where we get polarization.
That's right. Because at least for me, and I know the majority of people who vote like me, I have a lot of distrust with respect to even, this is a totally different topic, Erica Kirk. There are parts of me, because again, I walk through a process of discernment. I pray a lot. God, allow me to understand the truth from both sides. Allow me to not be fed lies. And I constantly ask God to help me remember that I want to be humble enough to know that the information that I'm internalizing and what I'm believing to be true based on the extensive research I do on most topics, that I still could be wrong, that my conclusion could be wrong. So, again, I've never met Erica Kirk, but I've seen enough that has placed me into a space where I proceed with caution there. And again, most of people who vote like me would strongly disagree with me and would lash me for stating such. But, I pray about it. And people that know me know that I pray strongly for discernment on all that I read. Do you all pray for discernment when you're writing? Good. You?
Absolutely. I mean, every day I start with, let me do this right, the right way.
All
and
right.
again, starting with truth.
Starting with truth, like the Kennedy Center smelling like Democrats. Just kidding. Haha. I'm joking. I'm sorry. You know I care for you, Chris. I'm kidding. That was an inside joke. Anyways, Kellen, you were going to say something about
Shanon made a very good point about crime.
Yes.
Why aren't these companies prosecuted for mistreating the foreign workers? And unfortunately, that has not been a prosecutorial priority from any of the federal agencies that oversee the H-1B visa, which is primarily the Department of Labor and the Department of Homeland Security. Lori Chavez-DeRemer, Secretary of Labor, I mentioned a moment ago, did announce, I think, 200 or 300 investigations into employers for abuses as part of Project Firewall. As far as I know, that's the largest inquiry we've ever had in terms of companies who are a focus of perhaps abusing their employees, although we don't even know which companies it is that are being investigated. But what the Dallas Express has reported is that there is some known connection between the H-1B visa and sex trafficking. I broke this story. No one knew that Ghislaine Maxwell, Jeffrey Epstein's top deputy, was brought to the United States for the first time on an H-1B visa. And then she was selected through the diversity lottery for a green card and then eventually got citizenship. But her first long-term entry to the U.S. is on the H-1B. And what we reported in follow-up series to that, and this has all been released in the latest tranche of Epstein files that just went to the DOJ website. But it is clear from the flight logs and from some of the other files that there are models who work for Jean-Luc Brunel, who was an accused sex offender. He died awaiting trial, much like Epstein, in Paris before he ever was convicted of anything. But for decades, Jean-Luc Brunel had 60 Minutes stories about him saying, this guy is a perv. Look out for this guy. Some American girls who were working in Paris accused him of rape. And women are flying on planes with Jean-Luc Brunel and Jeffrey Epstein at Little St. James, his, of course, infamous private island. Now, we can't say definitively that H-1B worker was molested by Jeffrey Epstein. But I mean, we have Jeffrey Epstein and we have Jean-Luc Brunel, and we have a lot of young women on planes. And there is a connection. These girls came from Eastern Europe, Czechoslovakia in one case, and Belarus in the other. And then there were some others, documents that suggest there may have been other Eastern European women. And the Eastern European modeling scene is known for sex trafficking. A lot of these girls are forced into pornography against their will, and forced into prostitution against their will. And so the documents are highly suggestive, although not definitive, that something was going on there. But what we can say definitively is the only person convicted of sex trafficking in Jeffrey Epstein's network, Ghislaine Maxwell, was brought to the U.S. on an H-1B visa.
And the same dynamic applies to illegal immigration.
Yes.
It was a huge pipeline of sexual trafficking that I don't believe anybody's disputed that at this point. And by the way, back to North Texas. I mean, what a lot of people don't know is this is one of the hubs You know?
Oh, yeah.
And
Absolutely.
yeah, it's one in Texas, we're either first or second with Houston. Nationally, top 10.
I thought we were first.
We're up there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe first. I've just seen the latest data, but yeah. And something, people don't like to talk about. It gets swept under the rug. That's why we do the Dirty John series
That's right.
and, reporting a lot of that. So that people do become aware of just how significant it is.
Mm-hmm.
And well, I won't go there yet. We have a problem in our public schools with that as well. Not sexual trafficking, but sexual abuse.
That's right. But I believe that that's finally coming to light. The abuse that is just entrenched in all our school systems.
It's crazy. We actually publish a link to a database where you can go by your school district, your school, and just see all the cases, whether they're complaints or legal cases. And, we had this situation up here, Salina recently, right? It's a cover up.
Yep.
Flat out. And people still haven't been held accountable. And that is going on in just about every school district in Texas. It requires attention, legislative attention, probably a Texas Rangers type of investigation, but it's serious.
And for these types of issues, Chris, I applaud the work that you're doing at the Dallas Express, because these types of things, that's never been reported.
I know.
You know that. Ever.
I know.
From any of our local outlets.
I know.
I mean, I hope someone corrects me if there have been others. I've never seen it.
They'll report individual use cases, but not on kind of the totality of the situation and, and the larger impact.
That's right.
And ourselves and probably Texas Scorecard does an incredible job of exposing, the school related incidents. And I'm telling you, there's one every day.
I know.
Every single day. And those are the ones we know about.
And have you written about that?
About sexual abuse in public schools? Yes.
Yes, but were you the one that published this particular link that he's referencing?
On Salina ISD?
No, I publish it through our socials typically. In fact, I just republished it yesterday. Yeah.
Okay, I can't believe I missed that. Okay, because I saw it, I thought, in an article.
It has been.
Okay. All right, well, good. All right, then I'll make sure that I share that as well. Over to immigration. You all know my story. I'm an immigrant. My family, we're all immigrants. I know you're multi-generational Texan over here, right? So you've
done your research.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Except a pit stop in Alabama.
Yeah.
That's all right.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. And how about you, Shanon?
I am second generation American. My grandmother was born in New Zealand and came here when she was a teenager.
I never knew that. Okay.
Now you do.
All right. How about you, Chris?
Native Texan, third generation immigrant.
Got it. Okay.
My great grandparents.
Italian?
Italian, German.
German. Yeah. I sense the Italian in you. It's a passion.
Yeah.
I guess I can be German too. But anyway, I'm married to an Italian, and I'm passionate. So it is what it is. Over to immigration. First and foremost, do you believe that the humanitarian lens on immigration is naive at all? Or, I guess,
it depends on the context.
Enforcement driven.
Yeah, it depends on the context. Look,
of course, on the context.
We let a lot of people in this country, that didn't come through the process the legal way. And it's impacted a lot of things. Like in Texas, there's economic impacts, right? In Texas, we're the two most expensive things for actual Americans, healthcare and education. Education is reflected in we have very high property tax rates in Texas, as you know, because that's what funds our public schools. One class of people is getting it for free and exploiting that system. And we've seen examples in Minnesota of where, government systems have been exploited. They're starting to show up here in Texas as well.
Tell us about your understanding of any of these specific instances in Minnesota.
Well, in that case, it's Somalis, and so it's probably more of an H1, B use case than an illegal use case, right? But if part of the problem is our entitlement system. It's just too available to people who aren't Americans, and it's the most expensive budget item we have at the federal level. And as you know, we're in a crisis.
Of course,
we're pushing $40 trillion of national debt. We're still running massive deficits. And there's going to be a day of reckoning for that. And this is why I always go back and say, look, this isn't about race. It's not about religion necessarily, unless we're talking about Islamic incursion or Islamification.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's about like what's right for American and Americans. And we got to get control of the problem. And, you know, again, like even as dramatic as it seems as what's been done today as it relates to deportation, the Obama administration deported way more people, way more.
And why does that not get told? Are you aware of that,
Because it's not
Shannon?
politically convenient.
Okay.
Well, part of it is the Democrat administrations define deportation differently than the Republican
fair.
administrations.
Okay, tell me about this. I wasn't aware of this.
So under Obama, they changed the definition. I think Biden did it as well, that if you're turned away at the border, that is considered to be a deportation. But that's not what you and I think of when we think of deportation. We think of like ICE going and getting someone in the interior and removing them. But the Democrat administrations now function under a different definition of deportation. So when you hear that phrase all the time of, oh, well, Obama, it was the deporter in chief, it's a little bit misleading because of the definition differences.
And by the way, back to the nuance around immigration, because I mean, I think, again, most rational, critically thinking people would say, look, let's get this problem under control. And then there's opportunities to talk about whether it's paths to citizenship, guest worker programs, all of those things. But we have to clean the system up first because the system has been just overwhelmed. And so the problem is politicians are cowards. Like in 2016 or 15, President Trump was elected on border issues, as you know. What did Congress do? Nothing. They had a Republican trifecta then. They could have passed a comprehensive immigration reform bill that would not have put us in a situation that we got to under the Biden administration where the borders were wide open. What has Congress done now? Nothing. Same. We're going to be right back in the same situation potentially if Republicans lose this midterm. It will be paralyzed. And then who knows what happens in the next administration, right? And it takes courage because nobody wants to be called a racist, but politicians are scared of the issue. But by the way, on both sides, the Democrats' answer, of course, was just like, let everybody in. And that's not the answer. It's nuanced.
It's so nuanced because I can tell you, I spoke with two of my very good friends who vote like Shanon, and they were like, of course we don't want freaking criminals in this country. Of course not. And I'm like, exactly. But I also believe that America can be a little bit of a sucker sometimes. People can claim that they're coming here for asylum, and for me, my heart is there. If I believe that someone's coming to us under life or death related situations in their home country, do I believe that, that there is some element of our ecosystem, whether that's the church, and when I say the church, I don't just mean the Catholic Church, I mean all churches working together to provide for the people who are coming to the country. Yes, I do believe. But
that's not why they're coming. They're coming to take advantage of those resources that we talked about earlier.
Very few are coming because I believe that they are trying to escape.
Oh, that's totally fair.
Absolute horror in from their countries.
That's absolutely fair.
And the Christian part of me says we must help them. But I just voted on Saturday and stated in my vote that I believe that Texas should not be accountable for paying for that at, name whatever.
But you do in your property taxes.
Of course we do.
In your health insurance premiums.
Of course we do, that's what I'm saying. So the way that we need to dissect this very difficult topic, how do you believe that we should dissect this at the legislature? Who needs to step up? I mean, Shanon, do you have suggestions here?
Of course I have suggestions.
Let everybody in, right?
Let everybody, yeah. First, let me say I agree. Do things legally. But the way that we are going about getting the people who are, I don't want to call them illegals. That feels dirty to me. So the people who are here illegally, I think you go after the criminals.
That's what they're doing.
You don't.
This is your bubble.
This is my bubble.
I'm telling.
But the things that I have seen and the warehouse that they tried to purchase in Hutchins as a place to just store the people feels dirty to me. And to put them in there like cattle. I mean, even though they might be here illegally, still treat them as humans and take them out. And I don't know where in the legislation that would have to happen. I think it needs to be done probably on a local level. I mean, I think that the cities have to get involved with it, but it almost feels like the cities that are blue are the ones that are being picked on by ICE. And I say picked on because that's what I've seen, is them going and knocking on doors and dragging people out. And I know that they're also getting their criminals out. I can't like diss what they're doing completely, but when you're just trying to put on a show, that's how it feels to me.
I don't
Is
think
that
they're
this
trying
is
to
a
put on
big
show.
show?
I think the left is putting on the show.
How?
They're purposely agitating to create this sentiment that
And
it's gone too
and
far.
let's be clear. It may not be the right or the left. It may be different powers that be that are trying to create absolute chaos,
Yes.
discord, and divisiveness in our civilization. I'm
And
serious.
By the way,
I
I totally
agree.
agree with you.
I do not trust the government. Let me repeat. I do not I do not trust the government. And for me, that is both sides of the political sphere. Me, personally. I don't believe, but do I vote right? Yes, I do. However, there are elements that I still do not 100% agree with. But if I'm given a choice of two things, okay, I'm going to choose this, but it is not because I 100% believe that this is end all be all best solution. It is a better solution.
I wanted to break in real quickly because Shanon made a very good point about her perception that blue cities are being picked on. And part of the difference, I wanted to explain the difference and why a lot of
That's where the
Democrats feel
crime
that
is.
way.
I mean, empirically.
Is because in a red city, like let's use Fort Worth or any major red controlled city, they may be part of 287G, which is
Explain that.
which is where local governments can come into a special agreement with the federal government, and they get some compensation for their training. They get some of their training
They
costs
deputize
covered,
local law enforcement.
essentially. And they can carry out certain immigration actions, like taking an arrest and then giving the person to ICE. But when you're dealing with somewhere like Minnesota, they are not part of 287G.
That's right.
Or
And so-
Dallas, right where we're sitting. They don't cooperate
Dallas
at
is
all.
not.
D-
Dallas is not, from what I know.
I can't let the cat out of the bag on that one. That's
Okay.
just what I'll say. I
Great.
can't let the
He's-
cat
he's
out of the
gonna
bag
break
on
a
that one.
story on us.
That's why I'm hemming and hawing.
Oh, got it. Okay.
But in Minnesota, the feds have to do all the immigration enforcement on their own, which is why you just see them more. And also, they changed who can do the interior enforcement last year, because traditionally you think of that being ICE. But in some cases now, CBP will carry out some forms of interior enforcement. And so that's why you're seeing all these federal agencies suddenly converge on these cities, is because they're not getting the cooperation that a red city may give to the federal government.
My biggest issue is with respect to that is I didn't hear anybody complaining or having marches or putting themselves in danger when Obama was deporting far more people than the Trump administration has to date. And if you go back, and this is the great thing about the internet and the great thing about finally having some freedom on social media to talk about some things, even if it introduces, some misinformation. You can go back and see these politicians, Bill Clinton, Hillary Clinton, Obama, speaking very, very firmly about how we need to get illegal immigration under control. They're only doing this now because it's politically convenient. It's the narrative that they're using to whip people up, to incite violence and incite these agitations.
What is the moral line to you between border enforcement and love of neighbor?
I don't think they're mutually exclusive. So, I mean, I absolutely come from the perspective that if you came here illegally, you broke the law, regardless of whether you've committed a criminal act in the United States or not. And again, it's not to say that there's not a path for non-criminals to restore citizenship, military service, guest worker program, lots of good ideas. But I do think that we have to clean the system out first. And, all of our individual decisions have consequences, right? I've made some bad ones like every other human being. And, I've I've been accountable for those.
Mhm.
So those, if you came here knowing that, you shouldn't be here in the wrong way, then go home and do it the right way. That's the way I feel about it. And I don't
Mhm.
believe that there's anything unchristian about that.
Mhm.
God had laws.
Of course. And God created our lands with boundaries.
Yeah, it
It
doesn't mean
says that in the Bible.
and it doesn't mean you don't
So
love
I'm
people, but that this thesis that we have to
Mhm.
love, everybody that comes here and embrace them, I think is nonsense.
Mhm.
Again, we can do that. We can love everybody, or even if we don't like the sin or the crime or whatever it is, but we still have to be accountable.
Mhm.
And so, in this case, accountability just means go back to where you came from a while and come back the right way.
And that's what I was born to my mother who was here illegally, but I was just born on U.S. soil. So people
You're an
like
anchor
me,
baby.
huh?
You're an anchor baby.
I am an anchor, but she left. She did not raise me. I was the only one given up for adoption out of her 4 children, and she went back and did it right. So talk about someone getting on their soapbox.
Well, I
When
have
she-
family too that's naturalized.
Yeah,
They
okay, got
they
you.
didn't come here illegally to begin with, but
Got you.
and I'm sure you've experienced too. This, and by the way, this is true for Cubans, Iranians, like
Yep.
a lot of folks that left those countries
Yep.
and assimilated. They're the biggest patriots there are.
Well, of
Like
course.
they appreciate it so much more than a lot of Americans that are.
Well, that's the thing, because I was not raised with my biological family because she couldn't afford to feed me or to keep me. But she went back, and what she says today is, if people plan to come here and not have to sacrifice, like, what are they thinking, right? What are they thinking? Because she left me here, and my wonderful parents, who are now deceased, raised me. But she went and did it the right way, became a citizen. My siblings all became citizens, and we're now all here legally.
And the truly
But-
amazing thing about this country, about America, is you can be from somewhere else.
Yes.
Literally, the opportunity is limitless.
Yes.
As you know, I mean, we have
Limitless.
a Cuban, heritage senator, Marco Rubio,
Yeah.
right? Like Obama.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying he was born somewhere else. Nobody get crazy. But I mean, that's where I get crazy. Like, the left screams about, all these discriminatory things, and other countries want to judge us. And when you look at it at face value, there's not a more egalitarian country on the planet. There's just
true.
not.
It's true. Yep. And I agree with you on that. And Kellen, and then I want your thoughts, Shanon, here with respect to this particular question, the
Well,
border enforcement and loving your.
there's very different sensibilities on this. You, of course, grew up in El Paso.
Mhm.
Part of the border barrier that's in El Paso is the highway,
That's
and
right.
the highway is the Cesar Chavez Highway.
Uh-huh.
And Cesar Chavez's sensibilities were that having open borders is terrible to the people already here. He, of course, founder of United Farm Workers, the labor union, spent a lot of time in California and in Texas organizing mostly Hispanic farm workers, many of whom were immigrants, many of whom were on green cards. And they felt that if you had open borders, the local farmers, the farm owners, would use the illegal immigration to drive down the conditions of the immigrants already here. And Cesar Chavez gave an interview to La Paz, I think in 1979, accusing the Carter administration of opening up the borders anytime there was about to be a strike or a collective bargaining action.
And that's a hero of the left.
That is a hero of the left. I think there may even be a Cesar Chavez Boulevard in Fort Worth.
Oh, I didn't know that.
I know there's a Dolores Huerta who was his deputy, and she's still alive, as far as I know.
I didn't know that.
Right. And she is now flipped actually on that issue, but she was with Chavez at the time. And so that's part of the sensibility of like, to be good to the people that are already here, you have to have some sort of sensible restriction, which would have been Cesar Chavez's position. However, alternatively, our legal immigration system was created in the wake of the Holocaust, especially with regards to our asylum system.
That's right.
And the idea was that there will one day be another Hitler, and we want to have our borders open to the Jews when they or the political dissidents that inevitably have to flee Hitler in Germany. That system still exists, and it has existed roughly for 60 years or so. And the question is, do the people who are entering legally under the asylum program today, are they like the Jews of 1940? Are they? That's really up for everyone in this room to decide when they vote.
Mm-hmm.
And is there someone equivalent to Hitler today that justifies that migration?
Shanon would say it's the president.
I absolutely would. Yep, you're right.
By the way, echoing your point, one of the things we haven't talked about is this electoral transformation in this state. 45% of Hispanics voted Republican in the last national election. And
How many?
it's 45%. It was a big number. And that is something that was never anticipated. By now, Texas was supposed to be blue because of the growth in the Hispanic population in Texas. And it actually surprised them, but it's because at the end of the day, what used to be the middle of the Democratic Party went this way. Elon's got this great chart. He's like, here's me. He was a Democrat, right? And, here's them. And now I'm not. Now I'm Hitler.
I point all that out to say that there are different feelings about immigration that are rooted in different moral lineages. Chavez
and
versus
based on
the Holocaust
historical events.
and historical context. So anyway, I just point out that out to say there's different sides. And I know Shanon, you're ready to jump in.
No, I'm good. I'm enjoying what you're saying. I just think the line is the way that we go about doing it. And I know you're going to say that this is because of my algorithm. I get that. But I'm seeing what I'm seeing. And that is people being dragged by their hair practically because they're criminal.
What he's supposed
but
to do.
when we do criminal statistics for the city of Dallas, we're not taking into account the number of illegal people who are here. We're treating those people as though they have murdered somebody or
No, we
done
actually
something
call them
terribly.
white people in police reports. Did you know that? No, I'm serious.
Well, did you know whenever I got arrested in New York with my brass knuckles, they had me listed as a white.
I was here with a criminal.
Yes.
No, that's
I was
FBI UCR.
But you all, I was like, I'm a Latina. I told the judge. Anyway, I was like, and you have me listed as a white lady. And I was like, I'm not white. I know I'm like white passing, but it needs to reflect that I am Latina. I'm sorry.
It's part of the reason that crimes by illegal immigrants were radically understated.
Yep.
Because that's how they are categorized.
But I can understand me because I don't look that. I mean, I'm not like my son, Louis. He's way more tan than I am. He looks way more mestizo, right?
But it doesn't have to do with appearance. Like if you're Hispanic and you commit a criminal offense, like you're booked as a Caucasian.
I know. And I don't understand it, but I know that that's accurate.
The racial categories for most federal reporting were created decades ago, and it was before like they really even thought of like, oh yeah, we're a country that's more than just like white and black.
And the Hispanic population was much smaller then.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
It was smaller and it wasn't really on anyone's radar. Now, of course, it is, but we still have the old system of categorizing. So like when I go through crime reports, typically you'll see it even on the comments of a crime story. It'll be like, white guy, and the guy's clearly not, but I do see it screwed up the other way. Last week, there was a guy who was clearly Hispanic, but was listed as black. And that was the first time I had seen that. It was either in Denton or Collin County. But it happens both ways sometimes.
Shanon, I got a question for you.
Yes.
So like a lot of these arrests, of course, are being played out on television now, right? If you're resisting, like I don't think there's any question about the legality of the deportation, but like if you're resisting, if you're just any criminal resisting, what are they supposed to do?
They're supposed to take you down, of course. Yes, they do what they have to do to keep themselves safe. But these people are instigating. Like they're instigating issues that weren't there before.
I don't
with
know
their
that I agree with
direct.
that.
Well, actually,
this is what I'm
I think it's the
seeing.
left that's
This is
instigating.
what I'm
do me a
seeing.
favor?
And
Can
you're-
you send clips
Yes.
so that we can include them in this? I want to see those clips.
I've seen a clip of an old man in underwear being dragged out of his home. He was not protesting. He wasn't doing anything against these people, yet they treat him with no dignity. I mean, we're humans. We should be treated with dignity.
And here's
I don't
the
think you
thing.
guys are gonna
Whatever
disagree
we're-
with that.
Yeah, no one would disagree with that. And that's the thing. I don't see that. Does that make sense?
Yes.
I am not getting stuff like this fed into my algorithm, which is why I want to see it. Can you just send it so that we can include it as part of this whole interview? Because for me, that's what I'm wanting people to understand. Okay, my friend Shanon is viscerally upset, as are people that like are voting like you, because you're seeing these things. I don't see those things. But the thing is, if I did see those things, you bet your buttons I'd be, trying to understand, where is this? Like, where is this happening? What county? What this? What that? I would be on it. But the thing is, I'm psycho when it comes to things that I'm fed and trying to understand and discern. But send that to us.
Of course.
Because here's the thing. No one here is going to judge, because that's what he's saying. Of course, if there's a poor elderly man being dragged out of his home by these people, that is absolutely lack of preservation of dignity, of humanity, of right? Like, that's abuse of power. And here's the thing. We all know that there are many police and enforcement officers who abuse their power because they're human.
Yeah, right.
We're all of us mess up. So, yes.
Yeah. It's like the problem is the media is just never going to be honest with you about it.
Of course not.
They're going to take the part of the clip that out of context that looks like
But I want to see
somebody
it.
did something bad. It was just like the thing in Minnesota, right? The shooting. It took 3 days, before he finally saw what exactly happened. And that's how they do it. And by the time they've already generated the
anger,
and the narrative,
the visceral reaction.
once the narrative is out there, even if the actual thing you see in front of your eyes is something totally different, they've already got it burned into you.
Just like George Floyd.
Same thing.
Yeah, the George Floyd stuff. And, he was overdosing, and I'm just like, anyway.
The autopsy report there was super clear
Of
as to what killed him.
Of course. But, do well-meaning people on both sides understand the heart behind it? Yes. And that's why I want to just continue these conversations more and more, because they're important. And Shanon, I want to ask you this particular question. How do you personally decide when the issue is real and when it's being emotionally manufactured?
I have to talk to people about it. I mean, you are a really good sounding board for those things.
Mm-hmm.
When the Alex Preddy thing happened, I was just as angry about it as everybody else. And then you sent me the video of him spitting on the car, whatever it was. And I thought it was AI.
Yeah.
I was like, why didn't this come out sooner? Like, something is not right about this.
Back to the distortion of the media.
We have to have these conversations. I mean, that's really the only thing that's going to bring light to what's really going on.
Yeah.
It's so important.
Is, like, even though he did that stuff and spat on whomever, I am of the opinion that, and here's the thing, you all know, I carry everywhere I go. I am a proud carrier of guns. Right. And so I will absolutely use my gun if I feel I must. However, and I'm also diminutive
a law
in
enforcement
stature.
officer, though, right?
Pardon?
You probably wouldn't do that if it was a law enforcement situation.
Absolutely not. Well, here's the thing. I would let myself just be taken. Yeah. And I'd be like, okay, we'll sift this out in court. I'm not going to
that happened.
Sit here.
We've seen it on video.
It did happen. Dear God. But anyway, the truth is that I just believe that we must create spaces that are safe, that are grounded and rooted in fact and accurate history. And I just wish that more people knew that there was a war for control of people's minds. And
that's the real war.
Absolutely. And the sooner it's exposed, the sooner people understand that the only way we're going to be able to march through this divisive space is by having conversations with people who vote
like
and
this.
think differently from us. And that is what I want fundamentally and firmly to come out of this, is just conversation. Because I can't tell you how upset Shanon was when, Trump was elected president. And listen, I sat
so
here
upset.
and I consoled her and I said, Shanon, I am so sorry. And I said, I know it doesn't make you feel better, but I felt the same way when Biden was in office. But the thing is, I didn't confide in someone about that. I didn't. And I wish I had.
Mhm.
I guess I didn't have you in my life at that point.
Not yet.
Or
But-
you weren't out on the street closing freeways down.
But I mean, for me, it's I want people to understand that there is a way to say, I hear what you're saying. And you know what? I understand how Shanon views things the way that she does. I absolutely understand it because I get that she's seeing different algorithms than what are being fed to me. I get it. And for that reason and that reason alone, I'm like, I love this person. And
Yeah.
I give myself grace for possibly being wrong, her grace for possibly being wrong. And like we proceed that way. But thank you.
Everybody's got different value systems, whether they're
Yes.
political, religious, otherwise,
Yep.
right? The key is we have to learn to respect each other's value
Yes.
system. Like I've never run into a radical leftist that, I couldn't have a drink with or do whatever with. I live among many of them and we're all very friendly.
Yes.
Again, it's when people become intolerant.
Yeah.
And I'm not pointing that in either direction.
Yeah.
On both. When people become intolerant and stop being able to have constructive discussions, that's when things have broken down.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where we are. And then with Trump in particular, a lot of it's personality driven. And, I tell people all the time, like, we've got to get past this idea of personalities, get focused on outcomes, political outcomes, because that ship has sailed. Like, we're going to get some interesting people in public offices,
Of
like, and,
course.
and that's not
But-
going to change. They're going to be flawed, as all humans are. And I fully understand the reason that folks like you, are absolutely put off by the president's personality. And I get that completely. But I also like to point people back to like, it's what you do, right? And like with respect to Trump and the left, they give him no credit for anything. Look at what he's done just in the first year with respect to the Middle East. Look what he's done with respect to Ukraine and Russia. Like anybody else would be winning a Nobel Prize.
Mhm.
I mean, it's just the truth.
Since we all have that kind of foundation, right, where we agree Judeo-Christian wise in some capacity, we have historical framework around it. In a lot of our, at least Christian and Judeo-Christian writings, like knowledge increases in the end times, right? Knowledge will increase. Wisdom does not. Discernment becomes harder. Confusion multiplies. Fear rises and love grows cold. So I state all of these things because I realize, like my example with, let's say, like Erica Kirk, and I feel so horribly for what happened to her, but she is beautiful and all of the things and speaks, I believe, in the right way. But again, because I walk through this whole series of things when information is not aligning entirely with what I believe to be true, I just kind of pause and I don't really make a determination one way or another. But I just pause because for me, at least with Donald Trump, right? He's he can come across as abrasive, slightly narcissistic, all the things. But, there are elements of that with many people who are successful. I mean, even myself, dear Lord, I can show number of examples of myself that showcase me as a narcissist, even though I know I'm not. But there are certain things
It's the most
that I do.
overused term in society, by
But
the way.
correct. But I'm saying
There's actually about 1% to 2%, I think, clinical narcissism.
Sure. But like I'm saying, there are instances in how I live my life that someone might say, that woman is a narcissist. Okay, yeah, okay, whatever. I'm not, but you get what I'm saying. So I do understand that discernment is going to become harder for all of us. So it is my prayer that for everyone here and for anyone listening, that they pray for discernment constantly and proceed with the small notion that whatever it is that they're being fed or watching could be contrived, untrue, and meant to manipulate their minds. Because as we kind of move forward, and I hopefully will be able to interview some of these people that I'm wanting to interview. Anyways, particular general and all of this. I think I've shown you the book, Shanon. But there's a lot of truth going into that war for our minds today. Is there anything else that you want to depart with? Anything that you feel is on your heart, pressed upon your heart, and maybe you didn't get a chance to say anything about it?
Just thank you for having me here today. It's been wonderful to sit down and talk with you. We're going to have to do this again.
We will.
What are y'all doing at 5?
Shanon, how about you?
I think that we all need to realize the weight of our words, and think about those things a little bit more. Chris, I love you.
Right.
However, the radical left and the crazy leftists and that kind of stuff, I don't think that's helping the division. And so if we can all just do our part with thinking about those things and consciously making the effort to be kind to everyone, not saying that you're not being kind, I'm just making a point of it. I think that would make a huge difference.
Thank you. Thank you for saying that, Shanon.
Of course.
Appreciate it. Chris?
What I would like probably to say last is just that I hope folks will apply the energy, the mental energy, to go look for the truth and to really, give some thought to who's delivering you the message, why, etc. Look for the patterns, like this situation we described last week with Colbert, because they're out there. They're tactics, there's strategies that are deliberate in order to promote narratives as opposed to the news. And in Texas, we have this really interesting dynamic now because every single major city, local print daily, is owned by a New York company or a New Jersey company. Those controlled editorially from those places, and those are not places that always reflect Texas cultural or political values.
Absolutely not. Yeah.
And so, understand who you're getting your news from and what their agenda is, because they all have one. It's Monty has said before, we're human, so we all have biases. Some are transparent about it, some aren't. And as long as people are explaining to you why they're reporting the way they are, and you're giving everybody an equal opportunity to participate in that process as you're reporting about, that's real journalism, not sowing political narratives and amplifying them in order to fulfill a political agenda. And that's what we try to do here.
Good. I love that. And you spoke beautifully to it about the journalistic integrity that you try to apply to every single article that you write. Thank you. Because I think without that as the true north, it will be lost.
That's how we got here.
Yep. So thank you.
And even the left has given us credit for it.
Thank you all for being here.